Yes, I'm talking about my Insane Trilogy level editor today. It's been a while, I know. A long time ago, when I first started working on the earliest prototypes of this project, I was giving semi-frequent updates about it, and I was making a big deal about every little breakthrough that I made with this stuff. I never really did that with this iteration though, which was mostly because I thought, like, what's the point in showing something that's so unfinished that by the time anyone else is able to use it, it'll be completely different. Case in point, this is what this project started out as. So, you know, I always felt like the sort of development updates wouldn't really benefit anyone because the longer I spend on this, the less relevant the previous versions become. I mean, this is literally just a .bat file, which, I mean, it's nice to look back and see how far I've come over the last few years. Like, I'm not joking when I talk about how much experience I'd had with coding before I started all of this, which was none. But, you know, it has now been quite a long time since I gave any kind of proper progress report, and people never stop asking me what's going on with this. And also, I finally found a bit of time this week, for the first time in a couple of months, to actually sit down and do some work on this. And I have made what I consider to be a few little breakthroughs, like the ones I mentioned. So I'm just going to show you what I've been up to recently and not so recently. Some of the stuff that's new since whenever the last time I did this was. So this is Toad Village, the first level of Crash 3, loaded up in the NST level editor, and it's still, some things are still quite broken. This is the path that the camera takes, and obviously it's flipped the wrong way around. There's all sorts of fun things like that happen. Collision is the first thing that I want to talk about today. The way that I've been doing collision for the last few years has been pretty annoying to work with. Let me show you what I mean. So, take for example this obstacle plank, number 5. I guess there's some more dotted about the level. Oh my god. It still gets, as I mentioned like 2 years ago, I think this still gets very laggy when you click on certain objects, and I still haven't fixed that yet. But I will do. I will do at some point. But like the way these like static scenery objects work in these levels means that if you move them anywhere, the collision that they appear to have when you play the level doesn't follow the model. So what would happen normally if I just left it like this and I ran up to this plank in the level, I would phase straight through it, and then when I got to this location where it used to be, I would bump into an invisible wall, because the collision would still be telling the game that there is a plank here, even though visually it's over here. And so what I was doing up until literally a few days ago to give collision to objects that do not have it currently is, I've shown this before. I would load in a specific type of file, usually from Toxic Waste, because that just happens to be the best place to get what I'm looking for. The border file from Toxic Waste, and then I would copy the coordinates of the object that I wanted to add collision to, grab one of these things, paste it here, and then adjust the size of this box until it roughly matched the objects that I'm trying to add collision to. Very roughly in this case, but if I just leave it like that and awkwardly reach over to the keyboard and export this level, look at all this shit. We'll come to what these are in a little bit. What should I call it? plank. And I will... Oh, there's a little thing here that shows the progress with saving the level. But it appeared on the other screen because everything's broken. But I can click yes to launch the game. Just about. My mouse... you may have seen me mention on Twitter that something happened to my mouse. So I'm using a different mouse than normal and it doesn't work very well. Anyway, the game should appear. Here we go. Oh, I forgot about that. I changed the splash screen a while ago because the one I had normally on my game was a bit of a spoiler for something that I want to make in the future. So I changed it to that a while ago so I wouldn't accidentally reveal it. So here is this plank. This is not controlling very well. I've got so much stuff open on my computer at the moment. This is very laggy to try and control, so that's fun. As you can see, the plank is not in the place it normally is. Normally that crate is resting right on top of it, so you can tell that I've moved it. And if I can maneuver my way over here, oh my god, you can see that the invisible wall I added in is allowing me to stand on top of this. But if I go to the location where that plank normally is, I can't progress because there is still, if I can get on top of it, there is still another invisible wall here that was originally the location of the plank. But this is a totally different system of collision to the one I used here. Like, everything that's already in the level uses a totally different type of collision to those invisible walls. And up until a couple of days ago, I had no idea how it worked. But thankfully, I no longer need to copy in a load of invisible walls. Oh my god, this is so laggy. I no longer need to copy in a file full of invisible walls and then carefully maneuver them into the same position as every single object in the level that I want to be able to collide with. You can actually see over here that I've already disabled all of the other invisible walls in this file, because all these other ones by default would have been blocking my path to even get through this first part of the level and reach this area. So there's many reasons why importing all of these into a level is not ideal. So if I just get rid of this one as well, there's now no longer an invisible wall on here. And if I go over to this object again and click on this collision button instead, and then just make a little adjustment to make sure it's saved properly. In fact, I'll move it back just so you can see that it's not going to be anywhere near where that other invisible wall previously was. And then I will re-export this. And now, when I come over here, you can see it's not in the same place that it was last time I played this. And hopefully, oh god. Yes, here we go. I can still stand on it, even though I didn't add an invisible wall in here. All I did was click on the collision box, and I ticked it, and now it has collision. And you can see it's not, if I can get back on here, this is running so badly. This is the reason why I haven't done any streaming or anything for a while. It's very difficult to have all this stuff running at the same time, but I will figure it out at some point. You can see it's not exact, the automatically generated collision. It doesn't work quite perfectly. It sort of just creates a big box of collision that fits like the maximum bounds of this model. So the end result of adding collisions to this might not look that different to if I had just put an invisible block around this model, but it is different for a few reasons. One of them is that if I go over here to where that model was before, you can see I'm now free to pass. There's nothing stopping me, and if I try to jump in this general area, which is quite difficult to do with this lag, but you can see there's nothing to land on. I have actually moved the collision for that model as well, and I can sort of squeeze under this box that you should never be able to get underneath. In an ideal world, you would be able to just click on a box and this would have collision that actually matched what the model looks like. But I think that will be possible in the future because it already is for some models. The way this all works is that none of the model files that you see in-game and that you can see here have any kind of collision data baked into them. But some models do kind of have their own collision file. And usually they're like the sort of things that, like moving platforms, stuff like that that you can interact with. But there are some things that you only ever see as static models that also have collision files in the game. This, I happen to know, this wall is one of them. And if I click on collision here, and actually if I change it and then change it back, yeah, you can see a little star here, which is just like a little thing I've added in to let me know when I'm on a model that does have proper collision. And I can slide this out and rotate it a bit, maybe make it a bit taller, because if I use these horrible camera controls to take a look at it, you can see it's like an arched wall. And so if adding collision to it just did the same thing as it did with this and made a big box around it, when you try to step on top of this wall and walk along this nice arc that it's got, you would kind of just float above it for quite a lot of that. But because this particular model for some reason has a collision file in the game, what I can do is export this again and then take a closer look at this. If I try and jump on top, which is harder than it sounds with all this lag, oops, here we go. You can see there's a nice smooth, well, the collision is smooth, the movement is not. That's a totally separate issue. Isn't this beautiful? You can walk up and down the wall like it's a real wall. There's no... Do you know how long it would have taken me to add that kind of collision in manually using those invisible walls before I discovered this simple trick? I mean, there isn't actually any collision on this bit of grass behind it, but that's cool. That's fine. It's better than nothing, right? So for most of the models in the game, this kind of thing is as good as it's going to be for now, I'm afraid. I mean, for a lot of things, that's perfectly acceptable. For a lot of platforms and stuff, that's the only kind of collision you'll need. And it's so much better than it was before. I promise you that. Like, it probably seems like such a simple thing. Like, you move an object in the level, and then the collision moves with it. But the visual stuff and the physical stuff when it comes to these kind of objects is all done separately, and it's totally different file types, and it's a lot more complicated and confusing than you'd hope it would be. So I'm pretty thrilled about this tiny little thing that I discovered. And there is hope. There is hope that eventually you'll be able to click collision on any model and it will actually generate some proper collision that actually makes sense based on what it looks like. I'll show you a quick example, but there are very few things that this works with so far. So I'm going to import quite a specific model. This model is one that does not have a collision file associated with it, but if I import it into this level and leave the collision box ticked, then it will actually, let me make it a bit wider so you can see why it's the kind of model you would want better collision than just a big box around it. That's very big, isn't it? Let me lower this down so I'll actually be able to get on top of it, hopefully. This particular model is, I don't know exactly what 3D shape it is, but it's like a tapered cube. Like, is that a rhombus or something like that? I don't know, it's one of those. But let's see how it looks in game. Oh, isn't it beautiful? Just a big old slab. So it's very shiny and reflective, which is nice. So using the same method as the that bit of wood over there, whatever that thing actually is, would mean that when I step off the edge here, I would be floating in the air, because as you can see, the full extent of the model kind of extends beyond that point. But you can see I actually sort of, it's very difficult to demonstrate effectively with this lag, but I sort of do slide down it in the way you might expect. I mean, I'm floating a little bit. That's kind of just because I made it so big. Normally that wouldn't be noticeable with the size this normally is. I don't know what... Some weird reflections going on. I can't tell what that... Right under where I'm standing. What is that? But anyway, you can see it's not just like a big cube. And the way this works is very complicated, and you probably don't care. But the basics are, you can now add collision to any static piece of scenery in a level, which wasn't possible to do before. So you no longer need to have thousands and thousands of invisible walls in a level to actually make it feel like you can walk around it properly. Some models will have full collision that actually matches what they look like. Most will just have a big invisible box around it, and it's up to you whether or not that's preferable to spending a long time making your own collision with those invisible walls. But, I mean, this object in particular is sort of a proof of concept that I do have an idea of how to generate proper collision files for the models that don't have them. But this is something that's going to need a lot more work, and I absolutely don't expect it to be in the release version of this editor straight away. But if you ever want to have a piece of wood in this level that's in a different place to where it was before, then yeah, it's slightly easier now than it would have been. I know this probably seems like quite a minor change, but I find it absolutely groundbreaking in terms of how much time it saves. Like, just being able to click on one little thing that says collision instead of having to manually import a load of invisible walls that I only know where to get because I've been doing this for 4 years. It'll just save so much time and make everything so much easier, and it makes it so much quicker to just jump straight into making something. Like, in the past, it would take so long to set up an area that you can actually walk around in and have a camera that follows you and have a floor that's actually there, you know? And this just makes it so much simpler. That's kind of the thing that I've been doing a lot of in the last few months and years, I guess, however long it's been since I last shown this off properly. It's like adding in ways to make things a lot faster and easier to do. Like, the collision is one thing that always took me ages in the past, and the cameras, I mean, God, the cameras are always a nightmare to work in this editor, just because they're never actually facing the right way. But you can see from this long noodle the way that cameras kind of work. You need to physically move each one of these little dots in to create the path through the level that you want, and it's very complicated. I mean, for both collision and cameras, see my behind the scenes of Arctic Antics, and you might get an idea of how much of a headache they can be to work with. But now, if you want a camera that will just follow you wherever you go, you can go up to this import map files, pre-modified templates. You've got all this stuff to choose from. Let's pick 3D controllable camera. And then if I click on crash down here, change the default camera to this one from Making Waves. Don't ask me why it's in Making Waves. I'll click something else just to make sure that saves, because that's the kind of shit you've got to do. Whoa, did you see that? The camera is now facing the other way, but that's not because the path of the camera was the wrong way around in the editor. It's actually because I'm using a totally different camera, which is fully controllable with the right analog stick. Don't ask me how you control it if you don't have a controller plugged in. If you play this game without a controller, I don't trust you. But yeah, there is actually a camera in this game that you can control yourself in all directions, and it will also, if you don't touch the right stick, eventually it will just spin around to follow you wherever you go as well, which is so cool. This is something else that I wanted to be able to do for a long time. Not just for like doing stuff like making it feel more like Twinsanity or anything like that, but also just makes everything so much easier when you start making a level. You can just load in a camera that will work straight away wherever you go. You don't have to lay down the path, and you can look around the level while it's still being made. Oh, I love this camera so much. And yeah, this is never used in the game. It came from the Making Waves file, which is one of the jet ski levels in Crash 3. And I have no idea what it was doing in there. I can only assume that it was something that they were using for testing before they developed like the proper camera that follows the jet ski or anything like that. But you can see you've got all these options. If you don't want it to rotate when the player does, if you don't want to be able to rotate it yourself with the right stick, if you don't want it to zoom in and out when you're jumping up and down, and you can change all these distances as well. It's great. I love this camera. But you can see down here, it comes from the file which is Making Waves, which is like the main file from that level. And if I show you an example of another main file, like this one, you can see it contains a lot of stuff other than just cameras. In fact, I don't think there really is a proper camera. This is nothing. But like this is the spawn point for the level. There's stuff like the crystal, the cutscene from the start, all these birds. There's always loads of stuff in the main level file. But in this one I imported, the only thing here is the camera. And this camera actually is the reason why I created this template thing, because I realised how useful it would be to have that camera and to be able to use it in any level. But if you import this file normally, Making Waves, the main level file from Making Waves, you also get like the ocean and loads of other stuff. And you can't move properly because it tries to spawn you on a jet ski, but there's no jet ski. You can fix all of that by manually disabling loads of stuff in the file. But that takes a long time. So I came up with this way of loading in like an already edited version of that file that in this case only contains the camera. So if you want to use a controllable camera, you can just do what I did, import it, and then change the camera in the settings, and you're good to go. And I've got a few more things like that. This camera trigger thing, again, if you saw me talking about Arctic Antics, that thing where I had loads of armadillos floating around the level because of the method I was using to change the cameras. Using this method, just by using this template, you can import just the camera trigger thing without having all the armadillos as well. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and watch the Arctic Antics thing. There's a few more things in here that are kind of useful, I think. This most crate types, if I can get out of this menu and find a crate to introduce what this means. If you click on a crate and go into the properties, you can change what type of crate it is, but you can only pick a type of crate that is already in the level. TNTs are here and nitros are here for, they don't appear in the level, but they're here because of other reasons. Don't worry about it. But if you change it to like an extra life and then click apply, you can see it's an extra life. But what if you want it to be a different kind of crate that's not in the level? Well, in the past, what you would have had to do is go to import map file and then pick a level that you know has the kind of crate that you want in it, which is a bit of a pain, and it requires you to know more about the game than most people probably do. So there is also a level which is called, I think when you play it, it might just be called Crates, but the file for it is Crash Crates. And it's sort of like a test level where there's just like every type of crate that's in the game in one level, and you can run around and break them, and it's fun, I guess. But if you try to import that file from there, you'll end up with loads of other shit that you don't need. So again, I've just made a template which gets rid of a lot of the unnecessary stuff, and you can just click on this. Then once that's loaded in, I can go back to this crate and I can change the file that I'm looking at to crash crates, and then you'll see there's loads of other stuff that I can pick instead. I mean, a lot of this stuff isn't that interesting, really. But like, I can show you by choosing something that's definitely not in this level, because it's not in any Crash 3 level. Let's look at a Torna bonus crate. You never see those in Crash 3 normally. Oh, you know what I just realised? I turned off my ability to rotate the camera, so I'm stuck with this view, but I think I can find my way to the first crate. Hopefully, this will give me a Torna token instead of whatever it normally gives me. Look at that. Beautiful. And I don't think I can actually do anything with it because they don't really work properly in Crash 3, but you know, that's just an example. Like, previously, if I'd wanted to get a Torna crate into this level, I would have had to import all of the crates from a Crash 1 level that has a Torna bonus. And it's really annoying, and you've got loads of extra crates to deal with, and the level probably would have crashed as well, because that happens a lot. But with this method, it's a lot easier to get other types of crates into the level. So that's probably a good demonstration of why I wanted to add this template feature. I'm not going to go through all of these right now, but if you're wondering why I have one for jet boards and no other vehicles or mounts or anything, it's because, as you can see from the file name there and here, the jet boards in Hang 8 and the other Crash 2 River levels are all in the main file for those levels. And as I showed you before, the main file for most levels contains a lot of other shit, like, you know, the spawn point and collectibles and various things that will break most levels if you import them in somewhere else. Most other places where you ride a vehicle or something, they've got their own separate map file for that. So, like, if you wanted to import Baby T into any level, which I enjoy doing a lot, I think you can just go into Eggipus Rex or Dynamite, and there's one specific file you can load in to get Baby T into your level, and he doesn't contain anything else. Did I explain that properly? Probably not, but hopefully you've got the general idea of how the templates work and why they exist. And just as a sort of extension of that idea, this is like a whole level that's a template, basically. Because I wanted to make a way to, like, instantly jump into a level that's basically like an empty project that you can do whatever you want with without having to, like, move the spawn point out of the way of the rest of the level, which is down here somewhere. There's a lot of shit down there. And, like, import the camera. You can see I've already got Making Waves is already loaded in. And also, these things, these boxes here, are from the Behaving Art file, because I did this before I'd figured out the collision stuff that I showed you earlier, and this is a different but less good way of having models that have collision without extra steps. So this kind of doesn't really work properly at the moment. I mean, I need to update this anyway now that I've changed how I'm doing collision. But the idea is essentially you just click one button and it will dump you into this empty level. And you can do whatever you want with it. And this was inspired by the flashback tapes in Crash 4. Because I think those are probably, like, the best example in the whole series of why there should be a proper level editor in one of these games. Like, ignoring the one that's in the Wrath of Cortex, that doesn't count. But, like, the flashback tapes, I always thought, kind of show that you don't actually need a full-blown level editor to be able to make interesting and challenging Crash Bandicoot levels. Like, the fact that these iron crates exist and, like, they're used in all the bonus levels, you can use them as platforms. You just need these and a few normal crates. Let us put them down wherever we want, and you can have some crazy stuff going on. But because this isn't Crash 4, this isn't an official flashback tape editor or anything like that, you can, of course, bring in whatever you want from, oh my god, from wherever you want, and, you know, build an entirely different kind of level up here. It's just, you know, another one of those things to make it a bit easier. It's not set up properly yet. this is actually just a level project file that I've got hooked up to open when you click on a specific button, which is not how it's going to work in the final version if I implement it. But I can kind of use it as an example to show how the projects work. So what that template file actually is this thing here, new level.nstle. So there's two file formats that I'm using with this thing primarily. One of them is NSTLE and the other one is Nsane. These Nsane files used to be .arts, but I thought that was a bit narcissistic, so I changed it to something a bit more generic. And I quite like that, Nsane. I think that's a fun extension. So these levels down here are the ones you can open up and modify and then save and come back to later, and then these work with the editor. These ones are like finished levels that you can play in the game. You still have to install them using the editor, but like these contain everything that you need to play a level. So like Arctic Antics up here, remember that? Remember when I made that? June 2020? I guess this is the time I saved this final version. And I think all of these test levels here are from the last few days, most of them. This is me testing collision after making some discoveries. And, oh look, here's the plank level I made earlier at 3:53 AM. Because this is the only time when I actually have the opportunity to do stuff like this. Then if I go into more shit, there's 1,703 more levels in here. I just cleaned them away because a lot of them don't work anymore, and I wanted to just have access to ones that I know do work in case I wanted to show any of them. So something you might have noticed here is that these level project files are a lot bigger than the final levels. So like something like Arctic Antics, this is probably the biggest Nsane file I have here. Oh no, there's one down here called Twinsanity 16, but I won't show you that at the moment. Arctic Antics, so this is like a full-blown level. It's got cameras and collision, lots of now unnecessary invisible walls, and it only comes to about 17, 18 megabytes. And then I don't actually have a working project file for that anymore, unfortunately. I don't think it's possible for me to edit that level ever again because I've changed so much about how these files work since I made it. But you can see, like, what's the biggest one down here? L105. That's my... a few of these are the levels that I made for my Crash 1 reimagined demo thing. And this is the biggest one. It's almost 2 gigabytes in size. And the reason why these are so big is because they sort of just... Basically, we're getting quite technical here now, but when you're working on a level in the editor, it gets all the models and the level files and everything it needs to display the level. It extracts them all from the original game files, and it keeps it all in a temporary folder on your computer. So you do need, at times, a few gigabytes free just to make sure it will work properly. But basically, when you save one of these projects, as it currently works, it just like compresses everything in the temporary folder into one file, and then when you open these up, it extracts everything again into the temporary folder, and you can continue working on it. That's not how I want the final version to work. So hopefully, by the time you're making levels yourself, they won't be 2 gigabytes in size while you're working on them. All of these, in theory, are playable levels. Let me show you how you can actually launch them. I do want to release an updated version of... Oh, this is something different as well. I want to release an updated version of the level launcher that I made years ago, so that you can actually play custom levels without having to download the level editor. But yeah, just as an aside thing, this is something else that I added ages ago to try and make starting new levels a bit easier. Like, more in terms of inspiration rather than practicality. Oh, and we found a fun little thing here as well, just coincidentally the first one that loaded up. Like, basically, every time you open up the editor, or every time you click new idea here, it will give you a random custom level suggestion, which is try adding some kind of file to some other level, and it says this is randomly generated and may not actually work. And I do need to curate this a bit, because it comes up with a lot of random shit, like try importing this camera into this level, which is kind of pointless. But this will actually work. If I click try it, it will create a level with this file imported into this level. But what's fun about this is it says L218 cold.insane crash. What that's supposed to say is cold hard crash, but because the file format for these levels used to be .ard, and at some point I just ran a find and replace in the code to change it to insane, because that was the easiest way to do it when I decided I wanted a different file extension. This apparently also got caught up in that, and I don't know why the H has disappeared, but yeah, it's the ard in cold hard crash has been replaced with .insane. Anyway, you can click new idea and get some other stuff. Here you go, try adding jungle rollers cameras to air crash. That's pointless. What a terrible thing to do. Neocortex hazards to crash dash. B205, that's the Crash 2 Cortex boss. So I guess you click try it, you'll end up with loads of asteroids floating around a boulder level, which sounds like a lot of fun. So that's like the general idea of this. Like, if you want to make something, you're not sure what to do, this is kind of to try and give you somewhere to start. Anyway, I didn't mean to get distracted by that. There's this level launcher at the top, which is like, if you click on any particular level, you'll see a list of everything that you can, every custom level you have in that custom levels folder for that level. So for example, the plank level I was just working on, you can see it here. Or you can go to the top, show all custom levels, and then every level in that folder will appear here. And I can click on details to see a bit more information. Now, because most of these are just like test levels that I never released anywhere, this will just show you information about the level that I used as a base. But if I go to Arctic Antics, because that is one that I released properly, it should, here you go, it's got the picture that I set, it says Arctic Antics, it says, "What are you looking at, fuzzhead?" which is the hint on the loading screen when you actually play this level, and it tells you how many custom map files are included in this level, just because that's an interesting statistic, I think. 56 different map files I had to modify to create this level, and it should work. So when I released Arctic Antics, all I did was I installed it using the level editor, and then, look at this fucking guy, and then I just like copied over the files from my game into a zip and uploaded that. In the future, when anyone can make levels, all you'll have to do is upload that .insane file somewhere, and then someone else can download it and install it using this, and you're good to go. So I'm trying to make that as easy as possible as well. A lot of these things that I'm doing are trying to make everything as easy to like start making levels and as easy to play other people's levels as possible. I'll look at it, it does actually work. I'm still really happy with this. There's my old flag up there. But yeah, so like this level, if you've seen my behind the scenes video about it, I showed like how I used to do collision with all these invisible walls. So like every time you run into something in this level, like a bit of scenery that actually blocks you like this, that is a separate invisible wall that I've manually positioned and rotated and resized to match up with the scenery. So you can imagine like how much time you waste doing stuff like that. I mean, I guess it wasn't wasted at the time because I didn't have a better option, but now that I do, making this would have been so much faster. Like, I remember the total editing time that I had on this level, oops, which is something that is displayed in the editor, was 4 days. Like, what's that, 96 hours? that's just... I reckon I could have cut that in half at least if I hadn't had to do all of that collision stuff manually. But yeah, there you go. That's how installing a level works in the current system. I think all of these should actually work. Do you think there's anything else interesting I could try? Actually, I can probably... I'll show you this. Book 17. Do you want to know why it's called Book 17? Bookcases, obviously. Empty ones, apparently. And there's a gem here. So this is... You might have seen this before. This was a little sort of thing that I did that's supposed to be reminiscent of a section from Classroom Chaos in Twinsanity. Oh, fucking... Stop talking about jiggle physics, you're distracting me. And this is probably a good place to show you another reason why it's nice to have some proper collision. It's because a lot of the time, when I was just testing stuff before, I would never bother. Like, there's just one big invisible floor here. I would have had to put in invisible collision stuff for each one of these sections, and it would have taken forever. Something else you can probably see is that this is not toxic goo underneath me. This is just water. That it basically looks black in this lighting, but it is just like ocean water from some level. And this is probably a good... Me standing here floating above stuff that's not toxic goo. It's probably a good example of like... The reason why I don't just release every single level that I make is because I don't make levels, I just test little things like this. They don't have proper collision, and in order to change that water into goo, I have to do stuff besides that which is possible in the level editor as it currently is. And like the gameplay is pretty fake as well, so I kind of walked around the edge, because all these walls have no collision. I walked around the edge of it to get to this area without triggering the not goo to start rising. But if I come to it properly, if I come in here and hit this checkpoint, you can see the water has started to rise now. I won't explain how I triggered all that at the moment, because that's actually quite an interesting topic that I want to look at in depth at some point. But you can see that once the water reaches me, I don't actually die, because it's actually a platform that's rising upwards. There's nothing hazardous about it, there's just a bottomless pit down there. Also, these TNTs, going back to collision, I also modified the collision of these bookshelves. They will still, well, sort of instantly fall over when you blow up the TNT, but the collision is not as it is in the version that I recorded. And if you saw that clip, you may remember that I did actually appear to drown in the acid when it reached me. But that was, in fact, more faking. God, I can't even get up here. Luckily, you don't die when you fall down because there's just a floor underneath. If I... Actually, I can probably just... Yeah, there you go. There's just like an invisible layer of something that will kill me. In fact, I can probably jump up to it from underneath. Yeah, there you go. And it's just by an absolute fluke that the first time I recorded this, the acid just so happened to reach me at exactly the moment that I hit that death thing when I fell down. So it worked out quite nicely. But yeah, I think you could like actually have toxic sludge that actually kills you moving upwards here. My bet would be using the water from toxic from Tomb Wader, because that does kill you when it rises up, and you can change the way it moves and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this is a good example of why a lot of the stuff that you've seen footage of has not been released, because it just doesn't exist in the form that I make it look like it exists. It's all just testing stuff that I try to make a little bit more interesting. Anyway, let me show you what happens if I go to open one of those project files. Let's have a look. Let's go for this one, because this was the biggest. So this is my version of Upstream that I included in that reimagining video. And this is like a 1.7 or 1.8 gigabyte file, so it's going to take a long time to open. And like, I don't have any kind of visual indicator that it's doing anything yet, so it does kind of just look like it's crashed, and it will do for the next few minutes. I'll tell you how long it actually took to open once it's opened, but I'm not going to make you wait here for it to happen. Okay, I make that about 7 minutes to load back into this. So that's like extracting everything out from that 2 gigabyte file, and then reading all the data it needed to be able to display this properly. This is upstream. I don't know why there's so many spawn points down here. I don't know what the hell is happening there. I don't want to think about that. Here's some big TNTs. There's some armadillos floating in the sky, like I mentioned earlier. And surprisingly few of these border files, actually. I guess I used all of these, but yeah. So like, in all these levels that I made before my new method of collision, apart from Arctic Antics, there's no collision along any of the edges here, or like anything that you don't directly stand on. There's no collision whatsoever, because it just takes so long to add all that stuff in. In fact, let's have a look at this. Right, so I spent almost 2 days total. I mean, 1 hour coming up to 1 hour, one day, 20 hours on this level. Compare that to Arctic Antics, which I spent 4 whole days on. You know, I don't think I was far off when I said you could halve the time by not having to deal with all that collision, because like, I didn't, for the most part, do all that collision. There's still clearly a lot of stuff. Like every one of these logs and platforms and thing, I would have added in collision manually using one of these invisible block things, but without having to go around all the edges as well. Like, can you imagine adding an invisible wall that curved around like this, and on the riverbanks as well? That would have taken probably another 2 days. I mean, you can see there's more problems here where like this platform would normally rise up and then take you over here, I believe. This is the death route, but here it's pointing over that way. And I believe every time you save and reopen this file, that will be pointing in a different direction, because the editor is trying to compensate by rotating things that it knows are going to be wrong by 90 degrees. But then when you save and reopen this file, it gets confused and rotates it more times than it should. Here's the jet boards like we saw earlier, and yeah, you can see I did this before I had the template system, so there's all this extra crap that I guess I've just left lying around somewhere. Like, look, way down here, the level's up there. If you manage to get all the way down here somehow, you'd find a crystal, because I just left it here from Hang 8. But yeah, I mean, all this stuff being loaded into the level unnecessarily, apart from just being an inconvenience and like the kind of reason why I always build my levels way up in the sky, it'll also like slow down how long it takes to load the level when you're playing it. So that's another reason why it's nice to have the templates. But yeah, like 7 minutes to load into this project. This is not the final system that I want to use for these level project files. I wonder how close to the if I just install this. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I want to export it as insane, and I'll call it that, just so I don't accidentally overwrite like a good version of this level. I'm just curious to see how close it is to the final version of this level that I showed in that video. But yeah, like I have ideas about like having a separate cache that you have to... Oh, good. I can't actually export and test this level. I've just had a big error message come up that I won't show you because it's very long and it includes a lot of words, but something about a thing that's not where it should be. And I think probably I was still letting me do things, but I've got this cursor that indicates that something's... Yeah, I should close this before anything really bad happens. I'll close out of this, and Oh, this is going to take a while to close as well, because it's got to delete the 2 gigabytes worth of temporary files, I guess. There we go. I'll just see what like the most recent version of that level that I have playable actually is. But yeah, like I've got ideas for having like a cache that you have on your computer that, like, when you load into a level in the editor and it like extracts and converts all the models and all the map files, and it like reads all the data from those, all that stuff will get stored in this like a cache folder instead of being included in the level project. And then when you save the project, it will read it from there instead of having to compress it all and then extract it all again later. It's a complicated system, but I do have ideas of how to slim the size of those projects down and how to prevent them from taking 7 minutes to load up again. Oh yeah, so the texture on this crate that's supposed to be there isn't there. I guess I added that later on. And also, that little cutscene at the start is fake. It's just something that happens when you walk towards the edge of the log, and then it zooms back out when you walk out of that area. Also, I think possibly, yeah, you could just stand on the water here, and like I said, there's no collision on the sides. I only put collision in on these things that you actually stand on. And can these things kill you? Am I invincible? My Aku-Aku's disappeared. This level's very broken, actually. Oh yeah, this doesn't really work properly either. Cameras don't work. I didn't bother putting in cameras with proper backtracking or anything. Ugh. There is actually collision on this hut though, which is interesting. I'm surprised about that. I wonder if I can kill this guy. Oh no, this is... Why can't I get my... Why can't I get the bazooka out? I want to try and shoot this guy. That's weird. Can you hear me pressing? Can you hear me pressing the button? Bazooka doesn't work in this level for some reason. I guess that's another thing that's broken about it. I guess I'll jump on this just to show you that it doesn't move in the direction that the level editor would have you believe it does. And it does go to where I said it was supposed to. I think I did put collision on this wall because the way this is... Oh, sort of collision. The way this curves around means you kind of have to push yourself into the wall to not just fall to your death, but I did anyway. And now I've respawned somewhere that doesn't have a camera. Look at this. There is a reason why I don't release every level that I make. Like, this needs a lot more work before it's actually playable. But, oh, here I am. Hello. But I would like to. It is, if it's possible for me to do it, then it's my intention to like clean some of these levels up, possibly the waterfall level, because I think that's quite cool, and release it when I release the editor, just as like a sample thing, and also hopefully with a project file so you can open it yourself and mess around with it once I've changed the format so it's not like 2 gigabytes in size. And also, at the moment, the way those project files work, it means that they'll only work on the computer they were created on, because of it has a lot of like file paths that will only work on that computer. I still quite like this mechanic. Not that I can remember how to do it properly. There we go. Oh, I guess I didn't bother putting... This is just one long bit of collision as well, so that's fun. And here... Oh, I'm dead. But yeah, I need to stop actually trying to play this level, because it doesn't work. Oh, there's the bazooka. It just suddenly started working, because I tried to pause the game and click on something else, and whenever I do that, the whole game becomes unplayable. That's another reason why all this stuff takes so long. But that's not your problem. I think I really should leave it there for today. I just wanted to like show that I am actually still making progress with this all the time. but also that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. I think I've achieved that, and I hope I've reassured some of the people who seem to think that I've forgotten about this project. I somehow always manage to see those kind of comments right after I've just put in like a 20-hour shift of working in this. So that's always fun to see. But no, I do also see all the supportive and encouraging things people say about all this stuff, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. So I won't try to. But please let me know if you think this was a good idea. If you think it's interesting to see me just messing around with this for a bit, and if you think I should do it again at any point, or if there's anything specific in the level editor you want to see or hear about, then please let me know. I am going to keep working on this at every moment that I'm physically able to, as I have been doing for something like 4 years now. Regardless of whether or not I'm regularly documenting the process, I will be working on this constantly until it's done. And then maybe one day I'll finally be able to release things like this that are so functional. I'm not pressing or holding anything now. I can't move. This is just something that happens sometimes when I play this game. And I have no idea why the bazooka wasn't working earlier, but oh, everything is so broken.